At first glance, this criminal case appears to be one of thousands of similar crimes occurring worldwide. However, this particular incident stands out not only for its unexpected conclusion but also for the unique footage captured by police dash cameras. For Catherine Ratliff, calling her mother before work was a daily ritual where they would exchange the latest news. But on January 30, 2002, something went wrong. Her mother's phone remained silent. Throughout the day, Catherine made several attempts to contact her parents, but all proved futile. Growing increasingly worried, she left work early to drive to her parents' house and check on their well-being personally. As she approached their home, her sense of foreboding only intensified. Catherine's worst fears were confirmed when she noticed her parents' car parked outside and the back door of the house wide open. Upon entering, she froze in horror. Her father, Thurman Ratliff, was lying in a pool of blood on the floor. The sight shook Catherine to her core. In the bedroom, another horrific discovery awaited. There lay her mother's lifeless body. In a desperate attempt to get help, Catherine rushed to the phone but found the line had been cut. She had to run to the neighbors to call emergency services. Later investigation revealed that her father had sustained 3 gunshot wounds, the last one to the head proving fatal. Her mother had been killed in a similar manner. Multiple bruises and abrasions on the victims' bodies indicated that the elderly couple had been tortured before their deaths. The house was in complete disarray, with items scattered throughout every room as if the perpetrator had methodically searched for something. At first glance, it appeared to be a typical robbery, but this theory was called into question by a large sum of money, $87,000 found untouched in the bathroom. This suggested either the robber hadn't searched the bathroom, or the crime had a different motive entirely. The ballistics analysis revealed an interesting detail. Catherine's parents had been shot with different handguns. This fact indicated there were likely 2 perpetrators. Additionally, shoe prints were discovered in the backyard, leading to tire tracks. Unfortunately, no other significant evidence was found at the crime scene. The fact that the criminals ignored such a large sum of money led investigators to consider personal motives, possibly revenge. Such a motive existed with Catherine's ex-boyfriend, who had kidnapped her 10 years earlier after their breakup and subjected her to several days of abuse and torture. Fortunately, Catherine had managed to escape back then. The perpetrator was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but before his incarceration, he had sworn revenge. However, investigation showed he was still in prison at the time of Catherine's parents' murders, and the investigation quickly hit a dead end. Events take a new turn when we fast-forward several days to the story of 54-year-old Butch Bowyer. On the evening of February 17, 2002, he was helping his 12-year-old son Brad prepare for the upcoming school week. As a single father, Butch worked hard to provide everything his son needed. Around 10 o'clock at night, an unexpected knock at the door disrupted their usual routine. This was strange. It was late, they were preparing for bed, and weren't expecting anyone. When Butch opened the door, he saw a police officer who presented his badge and an arrest warrant for suspected drug possession. Despite Butch denying all charges, he understood the futility of resisting a law enforcement officer and decided to comply, hoping the misunderstanding would be resolved at the police station. The officer escorted Butch to a white Ford Crown Victoria, where a second officer was waiting. Concerned about his son's welfare, Butch informed the officers that he couldn't leave his underage child alone at home. In response, one of them returned to the house, handcuffed the boy, and seated him next to his father in the car. It was at this moment that Butch first began to suspect something wasn't right about these officers. Handcuffed in the back seat of the car, he was powerless to do anything. His suspicions grew when the car drove past the police station and headed toward the outskirts of town. After stopping in a deserted area outside the city, the perpetrators began interrogating Butch about his financial situation. Under pressure, he admitted to keeping $40,000 in cash at his house. They returned to his home, where Butch, accompanied by one of the imposters, showed them the hiding place in his closet. The father begged them to at least release his son. After getting the money, the criminals put both of them back in the car and drove toward the city limits. Upon arriving at their destination, they ordered Butch and Brad to get out of the car and follow them. Soon they stopped near two pre-dug holes, a horrifying omen of what was to come. The realization of the inevitable paralyzed Butch. Following one of the criminal's orders, he turned his back, after which the man coldly slit his throat from ear to ear. Brad, seeing his father fall, rushed to him and immediately received 3 gunshots to the head. The criminals dumped the bodies into the holes, hastily covered them with dirt, and fled. They didn't verify that Butch was dead. This would prove to be their fatal mistake. As soon as the sound of the engine faded, the bleeding man, clutching the wound on his neck, crawled out of the grave and immediately began digging out his son. But it was too late. The boy showed no signs of life. Hearing the sound of passing cars nearby, Butch, covered in dirt and blood, staggered toward the noise. Despite his terrible injury, he managed to reach the highway. He stood on the shoulder, waving his arms, but passing cars sped by. His appearance was so horrifying that drivers were afraid to stop, even though they could see he desperately needed help. Finally, one driver showed compassion and called emergency services. A police patrol arrived first, followed by an ambulance. Despite his critical condition, Butch adamantly refused to leave the scene until his son's body was found. The need to ensure his child would be discovered proved stronger than his fear of dying from blood loss. Only when a paramedic explained that if he didn't go to the hospital immediately, he would die and his son's killers would go unpunished, did Butch agree to be hospitalized. He couldn't let the criminals escape justice. So he put his complete trust in the medical team. Before the ambulance took him away, he managed to give the police crucial information. The criminals were driving a white Ford Crown Victoria and they still had the keys to his house. Within just half an hour, the vehicle Butch had described was stopped near his house. Behind the wheel was 43-year-old Michael Carruth. A search of the car revealed handcuffs, a police uniform, $20,000 in cash, and traces of blood. After his arrest, Michael, who had no prior criminal record, denied any involvement in the crime. He was confident there were no surviving witnesses. However, during questioning, when an officer informed him that Butch Bowyer had survived, Michael realized the gravity of his situation. His only goal now became securing the lightest possible sentence. He tried to negotiate with the police, offering information about several drug dealers in exchange for leniency.
I know a situation where the man has 40 kilos of coke, but I'm telling him, I can give you 40 people locally. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you some things in which I will not, I repeat, I will not give you a name unless we can reach an agreement on some.
Although Michael and Butch didn't know each other, the second criminal turned out to be connected to the victim's past. It was Jimmy Brooks, the son of Butch's former colleague. He was arrested while attempting to burn the police uniform used in the attack. Unlike Michael, Jimmy, who already had a record of minor theft and car theft convictions, immediately confessed to his guilt. During the investigation, it was revealed that Jimmy had agreed to commit the crime under pressure from Michael, who had posted bail for him in another case and threatened to revoke it, which would have meant returning to prison. However, this didn't justify his actions. It was Jimmy who fired 3 shots into 12-year-old Brad's head. Moreover, he confessed to murdering Catherine and Thurman Ratliff 2 weeks earlier. As it turned out, Jimmy had worked for the Ratliffs for some time and knew about their savings, although during that robbery, they hadn't found the money hidden in the bathroom. A third accomplice was involved in the crimes against the Ratliff family, 28-year-old James Harry. Although Michael Carruth denied his involvement in the crimes, Butch Bowyer's blood traces on his clothing became irrefutable evidence. Jimmy, unlike Michael, fully admitted his guilt and cooperated with investigators. As a result, Michael Carruth was charged with murder, causing grievous bodily harm, kidnapping, and robbery, and these were just for the Butch Bowyer case. In 2003, the court sentenced Michael Carruth to death. 4 months later, the same sentence was handed down to Jimmy Brooks. The third member of the criminal group, James Harry, received life imprisonment. The criminals had compiled a list of potential victims, homes where large sums of money were supposedly kept. If it hadn't been for Butch Bowyer's incredible will to survive and seek justice, these criminals might have continued their bloody series of attacks. increasing the number of victims. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and support the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.